Welcome back to the channel. This is Anka Engineering and I'm Herman Wiegman. I got my play clothes on, gloves on, we're ready to rock and roll, and today we're going to talk about brakes. Okay, here we are working on the left hand side front brake caliper from a Jaguar F-Type, and I'm wondering if it will be easier to remove that. Maybe, maybe not. That's one. So there's a lot of beef to it. It also has a lot of beef to it. Okay, here we're looking at some used brake pads from a Jaguar F-Type base model and new Porterfield pads in their street compound R4-S. I took this opportunity while the car was up on jacks to change out the pads. These particular brakes are wearing very evenly. These are the original equipment from the manufacturer, and these are about 30,000 miles on the car. Both rear pads were wearing evenly. I was expecting this set, the right rear pads, to be the most worn because of dynamic stability or traction control. But it turns out it was the front pads that gave us the most wear. Down to about a millimeter and a half of material on either one. And this here is where the sensor was, and it was just starting to kiss down on the sensor, so I was expecting to get a low brake pad warning any time. So now we're taking the opportunity to change them out. Changing them out here with the Porterfield pads, the R4-S compound, and these are purported to have less dust but still good friction characteristics and good grip. So we're looking forward to that. Alright, let's throw them in, see how they go. At this time I took the opportunity to take off the brake rotors. They had only seen 30,000 miles of use, and they were still very thick. Because the brake rotors did have the wear pattern from the old discs, I took the opportunity to have them turned down at a garage that still had a brake lathe, and they came out very clean, very smooth, very pleased with the results. This was far cheaper than buying a whole new set of brake rotors. Only took off about 3 to 4 thousandths. That's all it needed to take out all the ridges from the previous pads. And so now I have a clean surface, and it's still well within spec. Jaguar allows up to, I think, 1 millimeter per side or 2 millimeter total wear before the the rotor is deemed non-usable. This one only had just a few thousandths of wear, so still well within spec. So if you can, get your rotors turned before throwing your new pads on. I just wanted to give a recommendation around the insertion of the front pads. In this particular application with the low performance or the single piston calipers, I found that I had to remove this spring in order to insert the new pads. Might be different on the two piston setup, but on this one here you really need to remove this spring in order to have an easy job of inserting the pads. Well, we've got the evacuator out, and we've also serviced the brakes at the same time as the car was up on jacks. So there's a single bleed joint per caliper. We'll just run around and pop it open. And suck some of the fluid through the system, refresh it. The new DOT4, here it comes. I just wanted to say something here about the various brake options that are available on the F-Type. My car is a Jaguar F-Type base model, but they do have other variants like the S and the V8 models, the R, the SVR. And so I was going to introduce a graphic here that goes over the various brakes available. Now, some people suggest I should upgrade my car to the, larger front rotors or the larger rear rotors, and you'll get so much better braking performance. But I've never run out of brakes on my Jaguar V6 base model. I do run it hard at the track, particularly here. This is Tamworth, New Hampshire, Club Motorsports. Very dynamic track, very large elevation changes, diving down hills, and never run out of brakes before. And these are on the OEM pads that were came with the car, and I just changed them out. So I've done several track events, several autocrosses, and very pleased. Now the car does weigh in at 3,500 pounds, plus with a driver and fuel you're up to 3,800 pounds. So it's not a light car, but I've never run out of brakes yet. If you start to run out of brakes, maybe first thing you should do is change out your brake fluid. Get some fresh fluid in there so it's not boiling on you. Raise the boiling point. I also wanted to just take a moment to talk about brake fluid. Car does require DOT4, but I really like this Bosch brake fluid. It's compatible up to DOT 5.1. Not DOT5, that's the silicon stuff, but DOT 5.1. A much higher boiling point too, I think 520 degrees Fahrenheit. Highly recommended. I wanted to mention one more thing that's really important when doing a brake service on your Jaguar F-Type. It's important to put the electronic parking brake into maintenance mode. To do that, you start with the ignition on, engine off, depressing the EPB switch for at least 2 seconds and holding it, then stepping on the accelerator for at least 2 seconds and holding that, and then with your free hand double tap the ignition switch. You should then hear the EPB pulling back from the pads. When you're done with the service, it's really important to first pump up the brakes such that all pads are securely against the rotors, and then you can go with your ignition on, engine off. You can put your parking brake back into normal mode by basically raising the EPB switch, holding it for at least 2 seconds, depressing the accelerator, holding that for at least 2 seconds, and then double tapping the ignition switch. And then you should hear the system going back into normal position. Alright, good luck. That concludes this video on brake service for the Jaguar F-Type. I hope you guys can maintain top performance in your cars. Change out that brake fluid often and keep an eye on your braking system. And remember, drive well, my friends. And blood sacrifice was given to the automotive gods.